I'm here today with James W. Murphy, a certified fundraising executive who is the managing program director at Episcopal Church Foundation. He works with congregations, dioceses, and other Episcopal organizations to grow their endowments and enhance and develop their planned giving programs in various philanthropic efforts and resources. He holds a certificate in fundraising, a master's in Christian spirituality from General Theological Seminary, and a bachelor's degree from NYU Stern School of Business. So Jim is the author of a book called Faithful Investing, The Power of Decisive Action and Incremental Change. And that's primarily what we're going to talk with him about today. So Jim, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my great pleasure. And just to clarify, I am certainly a contributing author, and a lot of me is in the book. I am officially the general editor of the book, but a lot of Jim Murphy's blood is in this book. So.
Yes, I saw that it's a series of contributions from other people too. So I should have known.
Exactly.
But the title really caught my eye, and that's why I asked to get together with you, just because I think it's a very interesting topic that I personally don't know enough about, and I'm sure a lot of folks would like to know more about as well. But before we get into the book, could you maybe just give us more about your background and what led up to the creation of the book?
So very briefly, I had worked for a major New York law firm for many years in their finance area, and had not exactly a conversion experience, but a career conversion experience, wanting to work as a full-time lay professional in the church. And I took a leave from my job. I started getting my Master of Arts degree at the General Theological Seminary, and then they made the foolish decision of hiring me. And I worked for them for a couple of years, and then was able to move on to the Episcopal Church Foundation, focusing on the areas that you were already highlighting. And my current role as managing program director, I oversee the Episcopal Church Foundation's efforts in the area of planned giving, as well as what we call donor solutions, to help donors become better philanthropists and to use some of the resources that we provide. It also is oversight of some special funds. I work directly with many of our endowment clients at the Episcopal Church Foundation, as well as many donors. So it's a very diverse set of responsibilities, but one that I am grateful to be a part of and have felt called to. And I'm grateful to say I've been there now 12 and a half years.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds like it would be a fun job, and you get to be involved in a lot of very interesting things. So.
And ECF, just to clarify, so the Episcopal Church Foundation is like what other denominations have throughout the country, where it is the foundation that supports a variety of tasks that the national church or the pension group is not doing. In our case, it involves a variety of things in the area of leadership and financial resource development.
Very cool. So what led you to bring out the book?
Well, so I was actually approached for ideas about a book on socially responsible investing by Church Publishing, which is our main Episcopal publishing house. And this is a case where, no good deed goes unpunished, if you will. As we were talking about ideas for who could write for the book and what would make sense for the theme and the focus, I was blunt and said, the Episcopal Church does a lot of wonderful things when it comes to socially responsible investing. We're not the only voice. There are many voices out there and many denominations and denominational foundations with which I was associated that are doing great work and really had great insight in the area of socially responsible investing. And for that reason, I suggested, well, instead of just making this about the Episcopal Church, let's be expansive. I'm always hoping to be expansive because of my commitment to ecumenism. And so the way we planned out the book, I reached out to a number of colleagues at other denominational foundations and came up with the basic premise, which is to create a primer, the beginning point for both congregational leaders and especially leaders of small religious organizations, who all of whom may be challenged by what they should do first and what they should do next when it comes to making choices that are socially responsible for their investing. And one fact, which is true in the title, which we talk about an incremental change, so many people are afraid to do anything in the area of socially responsible investing because they're afraid they're not going to do it perfectly at the beginning. And, perfect is often the enemy of the good. And the ethic of the book is to empower leaders, to give them the basic information, to give them examples of what a variety of different denominations have done, as well as in case study, so that they could reflect on what would be the right choice for them, because it will be different for every individual, congregation, and potentially denomination and other organizational differences. So by choosing to not be perfect and choosing to incrementally move forward in the area of socially responsible investing, those are the ethics that drive this book and hopefully will empower leaders to do something instead of nothing, and to incrementally move forward in their efforts to ensure that their investments are matching up with their moral obligations and their spiritual goals.
Wonderful. Well, I'm really glad that you chose an ecumenical approach to this. So often in the past, it seems as though there's a lot of silos out there that are
there still are
more distinct than what they should be, in my view anyway. So there's a study guide that goes along with this too. Is that correct? So the church.
That's actually the newest part of the book.
Okay.
We have now done a study guide. I put together a study guide which could be used both from an individual reflection perspective for someone just reading the book and trying to gain insight for themselves, as well as for their congregation. But it is also done in a format so that you could go through chapter by chapter and review aspects of the book, with the main point being collaboration among the leaders of a congregation or among an organization. This is a challenge, and we know that from a variety of experiences, that people need to collaborate together and come to a consensus. It doesn't mean that everyone will agree on everything. No one should agree on everything. We all inspire each other. However, it's crucial that people can come to at least initial sets of consensuses so that they can move forward and they can actually incrementally seek to gain more information and take actions that are appropriate in their particular circumstances.
So could you talk a little bit about the concept of fiduciary responsibility and how that relates to this?
Yeah, so that's crucially important. I work for the Episcopal Church Foundation. If you read the book, you'll see many other denominational foundations from the Presbyterian world, from the UCC, from the Roman Catholic world, and a variety of others. All of us deal in the area of investment, and all of us have options, different from each other, obviously, for how a congregation or an organization could invest the funds that they have on hand. And so the key point to start with is that you are seeking to build trust among your constituents, that you are demonstrating that you've taken the time to reflect on what are your goals, what are the choices you're going to make, what are the moral decisions you're going to make, and then seek to bring your investments in line with those moral decisions, right? And there still, even to this day, is misunderstanding when it comes to socially responsible investing, or ESG investing, environmental social governance choices that individuals and organizations make when choosing what investment is appropriate. And because there is still this misunderstanding that choosing to invest in a socially responsible or ESG manner is not in line with being a good fiduciary of the assets, we are seeking with this book to demonstrate to people that these are exactly that they are good fiduciary choices, both to demonstrate to your constituents that you're worthy of getting new gifts, to fund these efforts and others, but also to have a sense that the leadership of a congregation or the leadership of an organization has reflected on these issues and is taking into account appropriate fiduciary standards to ensure that they're investing well, investing with a good provider, and to ensure that they are not going to be underperforming. That's the biggest misunderstanding when it comes to socially responsible investing, no matter how big it's gotten in recent years. People think they're going to underperform and that will not fulfill their fiduciary responsibilities to oversee these assets for the future mission and ministry of their congregation or religious organization. So it is key to demonstrate to all of your constituents and to all other leaders that these decisions have been reviewed and thought through, so that, this is the importance, so that you can speak clearly that you are being a good fiduciary over the gifts you have, and more importantly, that you will be a good fiduciary for the gifts that are yet to come. And that obviously is the area most important to me in the work I do, to ensure that you are building that sense of trust and confidence to inspire people to give you additional gifts for your congregation or religious organization. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I can see why it's a point of confusion.
And it's a starting point, and that's why we start with those basics about putting an investment policy statement. I almost just use the abbreviation of IPS, putting your IPS in place, ensuring that it conforms with what your goals are as a church or an organization, and then building upon that with the basic information that people need to know, because I hate to say it, but many people who are really inspired to invest in a socially responsible way when it comes to congregations may not also be the folks who are on the investment team. And so there might be a process of convincing and drawing people into the work that you're doing. So by empowering leaders with this primer and with all of these examples, it will help guide the leaders of congregations and organizations to guide other leaders along this path, and to demonstrate that making this choice to invest in a socially responsible way is good for the congregation and the future mission and ministry of whatever organization with which you're involved.
So I'd be interested in your thoughts on, one of the phenomena that we've been seeing recently relative to corporations, basically being pushed, motivated, incented to take a stand on more and more social issues, which bleeds, of course, over into political issues, than had been the case, in the past. Where do you see that trend going, and how does it affect this investment world?
Well, I think the trend is just going to increase, and it's going to focus, I think, as time goes by, in what is called ESG, or environmental social governance investing, that it is demonstrating to the folks who are running our wonderful corporations in our country and abroad that investing in a socially responsible way, by investing in your people, by putting in place policies that are beneficial to your employees, to the environment, to other constituents that you may be dealing with, that all of those actually build up the long-term value of the company and therefore your investment. And so I think this interaction is going to increase, but and it's already been happening for some time, it's not going to be, I think, as confrontational. It'll be more of a discussion, more of a collaboration. I've used that word many times today. Collaboration between those who are investors in a company and the leadership of that company. So, and I should just say this. I mean, in the past, there had been more confrontational activities going on between people that were trying to push a particular socially responsible agenda, and they may have been in conflict with the leadership of the organization. And so it's really important to make that shift to focus on collaboration. There is a wonderful chapter in our book written by Tim Brennan and Sister Pat Daly. Many of the folks listening to this may know either of them. Sister Pat is just an incredible person and someone who's been involved in socially responsible investing for decades. And she talked to me in various interviews I've done on my own author page about this transition where it's a focus on this collaboration between the individuals making these shareholder resolutions, as they're called, shareholder resolutions, making those to the annual meeting and seeking to collaborate with the leaders of the organization to see that in the end, it is truly beneficial both for their business and for their image, and for the betterment of our world.
Good. I'm glad to hear that that's going on to the degree that it sounds like it is.
And shout out to Sister Pat.
Yes, yes. So this is my, relatively naive perception, but so please correct me.
I'm always happy to correct.
It seems as though maybe the environmental aspect of this, climate change, aspect of this in particular, has historically been one of the leading drivers of socially responsible investing. Is that changing? I mean, has there been an increase in attention given to other social issues? And how do you see that balance going forward?
So I think you will continue to see a focus on the environment. The Biden administration is certainly focusing on this. But again, it's focusing on the long-term benefit of focusing on the environment and doing things which benefit all of society. Looking forward to the future, I think it's going to continue to evolve. There's no doubt. There are certainly going to be hot button issues that are focused on from time to time. And without a doubt, what's happening right now is the focus on racial justice and racial equity.
That's
crucially important thing. And there is no doubt, but this is, in a way, what's happening right now, where people are focusing on what can you do as a company to enhance racial justice and racial equity, and no longer just paying lip service or just putting a token, sadly, that old phrase of token person on your board. It is much more of it now because there is so much that we benefit by working together and being more diverse. And the fact of the matter is, I can't quote exactly the articles, but there have been many articles about this, about when you diversify your management, you actually improve your performance over time. So these are all factors that are just going to come up again and again and again, both because it will make our world and our American society better, but also because it makes good business sense to be diverse, to look for other people's points of view. That's also why we did this as an ecumenical book. We wanted a wide diversity of views.
Good. I'm glad to hear all of that, and couldn't agree with it more. So within the book, I think you make an attempt to not be terribly prescriptive, and tell people what to do.
That is true.
Right?
That is true.
So how do you position your guidance, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a hallmark. That's a hallmark of the book. And we make it clear that even if there are certain contributors to the book that really clearly have a very clear point of view about something, we do want to make it apparent to the reader that we are not telling you that there is only one way to do socially responsible investing. Not every denomination will agree on what are the most important aspects to focus on when it comes to socially responsible investing. But there are so many ways that most denominations would agree on issues of social justice, racial equity and racial equality, ensuring that people are paid a fair wage and that you don't have child labor. I mean, many things that people share in common However, we do make it clear that each denomination, each organization may make different decisions, and we try very hard not to, put a negative on someone who may either decide positively or negatively in a particular way, but share the basics of process and what people should be reflecting on from the beginning chapters on building up that sense of fiduciary responsibility, putting appropriate investment policies in place, gathering details for how those are going to be managed and sharing that with constituents so that you build up that sense of trust, but then adding to that opportunities to reflect on what is appropriate for your particular circumstances, because not everyone will agree. Not everyone agrees that you should stop investing in alcohol or gambling. So, I mean, there's a variety of perspectives. And then there's also the perspective to take about whether or not you as a small endowment, a small organization with not a lot of funds to invest, you may not be able to invest directly in stocks. It may be prudent and fiduciarily responsible for you to invest with your denominational foundations that may already have programs in place that would be fitting with your goals, or to invest in a variety of funds. And there are many, many socially responsible investing funds that are now available. However, you don't vote the shares when you own a fund, right? You entrust that to others, either at the denominational foundation level or through the funds which you own. And so you make your choices. Therefore, it may not be perfectly what everyone on your committee wants to do, but you are still adding to the goal of making our world a better place and supporting a variety of socially responsible activities.
So another naive, layperson's question, are there independent rating services that apply to funds or to corporations that
I don't want to highlight any in particular right now, because there are some that do this and that will say that this is the rating, and you can take a look at those in a variety of places. However, there isn't exact consistency among all investors on what exactly different scores mean. They can indicate perhaps that a very small amount of activity by a company is focused on fossil fuels or focused on something else that people would want to avoid perhaps. However, there's not complete consistency yet. We all believe that is coming and look forward to that day where we can all point, just like we do for many stock indices, to say, yes, this is the exact guideline for what we're trying to invest. So the best idea is to seek help from investment advisors, in our case within the Episcopal world, certainly with the Episcopal Church Foundation and the work that we do with State Street Global Advisors as an option. But it really depends on your particular circumstance.
Interesting. Well, I'm sure it's a very complex.
Yet it is complex and is moving ahead. And one day soon, there should be more clarity and simplicity.
So in addition to, the book being beneficial to people who lead the kinds of organizations that you mentioned, I got to believe that a lot of individuals would benefit from this too.
Well, in two ways, I would say. One, there is a chapter, and it's mentioned in various places throughout the book, for how an individual may choose to do this for themselves. And that isn't just their investing. It's also their choice for how they do their banking and how they may do a variety of other things, because that's also an element of not telling people exactly what to do. We don't know everyone's particular circumstance. Not everyone may be able or have funds to invest. But there's a variety of things that are mentioned in one of the chapters of the book for an individual to take some actions on and what they could try to do to put forward their own goals. So that's one thing. The other thing that I will mention, again, I'm always going back to how we can influence our other organizations and our churches, as an individual makes a choice for themselves to take these actions, they're actually educating themselves about the entire topic. And by reading this book, and therefore they could take their experience, their point of view, and suggestions potentially to the leadership of their congregation or potentially their organization on which they may serve as a board member or something else. That it is this ability to reflect on what is important to you and what you're trying to achieve, and then take a step forward, even if that's incremental, step by step, to perhaps change how you invest or how you bank or the choices that you might make, or even the volunteer activities you might make as an individual, you might choose to do as an individual. That's why the study guide which exists also could be done individually, with the hope that it would inspire people to also take action to talk to leaders at their congregation or religious organizations in which they are involved.
Wonderful, wonderful. So before we wrap up, I mean, is there anything else about the book that you'd like to pass along?
Well, I think what I really want to pass along is thanks. I want to thank from my heart, and they hear it all the time from me because I stay in touch with all of the folks who've written for this book, just to thank everyone who contributed to this book to make it what it is. All of the contributing authors, as well as all the fantastic people at Church Publishing, Nancy Bryan and others who helped bring this from just a collection of ideas to the final book. This is the first book that I have my name on the cover, so it's an experience. Writing a second book on planned giving in the process now.
Good.
That'll be another interview maybe
Absolutely.
in the future,
Absolutely.
Brian.
Well, I'm really glad, that you've done this, and that Church Publishing, has done it with you, because I think it's a very helpful topic that a lot of us just don't know enough about.
Yeah.
And so, that's a good thing to educate us all.
Yeah, and I also don't want to neglect to thank Donald Romanek and Karsten Sierk, who both had a part of this book, and they are at the Episcopal Church Foundation. Karsten is involved in overseeing our current asset management program. Donald Romanek is the president of ECF, and for their support and encouragement as this book came to be.
Wonderful. Well, please do keep us posted, on the next book and the work that you do. And thank you very much for spending some time with us today to explain all of this.
It's my great pleasure, Brian, and God bless.
Same to you.